right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Today we are doing rentals inside of the service program. So we're going to look at setting up rental inventory with serial numbers. Obviously we can do them without serial numbers. We'll set up a rental transaction and go through the various different ways we can record a delivery or a pickup and manage those, as well as then run through a couple different billing scenarios. Now, every rental company operates a little differently. I'm going to try to show you the best practices to follow. We're going to have plenty of time at the end for specific questions on maybe how to set up a certain scenario. I'd be more than happy at that point if you were to kind of hold all the questions until the end. Like I said, we'll have a good 20 minutes or so to go over anything specific. So everything dealing with rentals inside of the service program is located kind of in the top of the toolbar, either items rented or rental info. The first thing we would need to do is set up our inventory if we're going to use serialized inventory to rent out. So we would go to rental info, rental inventory list. Here's where we could set up rental inventory that requires a serial number or that you want to track with a serial number. If you're not planning on tracking serial numbers, you don't have to set up anything here. So I'm going to follow the example of, let's say, portable toilets. I have a couple items in QuickBooks, one called PT for portable toilet, and I can put in a serial number. I could put in a daily charge. The software can then automatically calculate a weekly and monthly charge for me. And it will work vice versa as well. If you put in the monthly charge, it will calculate weekly and daily. Now on this screen, we are really only picking a few things. We're setting up the item, the serial number, the charges, and then you're not filling out who it's rented to or anything else on this screen. That information gets populated when we actually enter an order into the service program. And you can come back to this list to see where a specific piece of equipment was. If you plan on setting up barcoding for inventory, there's a button on the top right that says View Barcodes. You'll see that a barcode field is now displayed. By default, it's going to make the barcode the same as the serial number. If you need to change it, you can change the number or the series of letters and numbers inside of the two asterisks for a barcode. So if I want to set up another piece of equipment, I could just select that same item, PT, put in my next serial number.
No.
Put in one more.
That's the same as asterisk, right? Yeah. It's the same as asterisk. We don't use them.
Now we also have a way to bulk add serial numbers. You can click that button at the top of this list. And you'll get a pop-up window where I could select my item, let's say PT. I can put in its, our daily charge, weekly, and monthly. I can tell the software to add maybe 10 to the list, and I'm starting off the next number will be 1004. I can press Add. So it'll automatically then populate out the items for me. Now, once you've set up the items, if you notice the serial number is blue and underlined. So that's just another visual indicator. You can just double-click the serial number to drill into that specific piece of equipment. From here, you have a lot of other information you can track: market cost, replacement costs, size, condition, maybe the vendor who you purchased it from. You'd also see a summary of any transactions that this rental is currently tied to, any billing history. You can go to File link and press Browse and attach maybe a picture, or maybe an original sales receipt or something like that. Now some of those first custom fields are displayed if you scroll all the way to the right, so you would see some of that information here. Once you're finished setting up your inventory, you can just press close on that screen, and now we're ready to actually enter in an order. So when I'm entering in a new rental transaction, I'm just going to go to Rental Info, enter a new rental. I would select my customer. And then the next thing I would want to do after picking my customer is put the items that I'm renting. So I'm going to select my portable toilet. And then it wants me to pick a serial number. So if you track serial numbers, this is where you would put in the serial number. Otherwise, you can just leave it blank and adjust the quantity. This serial number shows only, or this drop-down only shows serial numbers that are available. So once you rent something out, you won't see it again in this list until it's been returned. We're going to set our billing increment to monthly. And I have an option to prorate the units. You don't have to prorate if your company doesn't do anything with prorating. I'm going to demonstrate that we are prorating. What this will do is if the customer rents something out in, let's say, the middle of a billing period, it's automatically going to prorate their first invoice to catch up, let's say, that customer onto the same billing cycle as the rest of the customers. And then from that first month going forward, they'd be on a full month-to-month. Now, the many different ways the service program can handle billing. We can handle 28-day or calendar day billing in arrears or in advance. We can do individual billing groups for each customer, meaning if I rent something out on the 4th, I get an invoice on the 4th every month. If someone rents something out on the 5th, they could get an invoice on the 5th of every month. The easiest way to set it up, though, is to put all your customers into one billing group. So either every calendar month or every 28 days, you run billing for everything that's currently out on rent. I'll demonstrate the latter method first of putting everyone into one billing group and then running billing, and then we'll look at a specific scenario of maybe based on the rental date or the start date or delivery date for that customer, that being the start date of their billing period. You see here my delivery date. I can set this per line item, so maybe we are delivering it today. The billed through date is going to be the starting date, or basically what this customer is currently paid through. So since this is a new rental transaction, they've not been invoiced yet, that date should be the same as the delivery date. This way, if I were to bill them, let's say at the end of the month, it's going to be, from 2/4 to whatever that ending billing date is. If I need to rent out another unit, I can just go right to the next line, pick my serial number. And again, it doesn't show me 1001 because it's already rented. Now we've got 2 items on here. Anything else you need to charge or show up on that invoice that goes to QuickBooks gets added to this rental transaction. So if we charge for delivery, I could put in a delivery fee. Maybe it's just $15 per unit, so I'm going to do quantity 2 here. I'm going to tell the delivery fees to run once, meaning I only want that to show up on the customer's first invoice. Maybe we also bill them for weekly service. And they get 4 services a month at $25 per service. I'm going to tell that not to prorate. I'm going to put my delivery charge and my service charge as flat rate, meaning it's just going to be a flat $30 for the delivery and $100 every month for service. I can put any transaction notes, delivery notes, or pickup notes in. So I can put in notes for the driver. could then maybe assign it to a driver, and I could put in a delivery date of today. Now these delivery notes, pickup notes, the date and the driver, all that does is control a form that you can print. So if I go to the top right, I could select delivery ticket and print. And then here you will see our kind of sample delivery ticket. It'll have the delivery date and the driver, the items, and the delivery notes. We have the option to put in a site contact. If this person's not currently tied to this account, we can add it to the list by hitting yes, and we can put in a phone number. And now I pretty much have everything I need to basically, this rental transaction is set up. Again, like everything else in the software, there's no save button. I can simply hit close, and that will save that rental order. Now, to pull up a list that's going to show me everything I currently have out on rent, basically all my open orders, I can go to items rented from the top. So this shows me I've got one transaction in here, invoice number 177. We've got 4 items on that transaction. So it shows me the delivery, the portable toilets, and the service. This is a great list for getting you some quick information. For instance, I could filter on an item of portable toilet. So it's going to show me maybe all just of that item that is currently rented, and I get a quantity down here at the bottom, and then an estimated monthly total that I'd be billing for. Real handy to have. If I want to get back into that transaction, I can just double-click that invoice number on the far left. And the one thing we haven't done is set this up maybe on a route for delivery and service. So you could certainly do what I'm about to show you at the same time you're entering the order. I just wanted to show you how to save it and pull back up the same transaction. So if I need to add this onto a route for service, it's probably easy when I'm entering the order. Just go to the far right where it says select route. I can put it on a route. I can pick the frequency. This is going to be a delivery. I'm going to put in the delivery date for today. Put on route. Done. It's on the schedule. Now I need to set them up for, let's say, they're getting weekly service. So I'm going to pick my frequency of weekly. I want to put in my service date. We're delivering it on Tuesday, so maybe they're going to be weekly every Tuesday. Their first service date will be the 11th. Put on route. So now if I hit close, and if I go to my route schedule, this customer is now on the route schedule, once for a delivery and once for a weekly service. I could print a route sheet for the driver, print a route info, print route sheets. I want to print the item with rentals, or print the version with rentals. So it gives me the stop for the delivery for today with the items that are rented or needing to be delivered with serial numbers. So now when we're looking at possibly billing for this, we have a few different ways we can run billing. Let's say you bill in advance, and maybe on delivery you invoice them that day for their first month. You can always just hit Post to QuickBooks at the top of the transaction. That would create you an invoice right away in QuickBooks for this rental. That's great for any special events that you kind of pre-bill for or collect at the time of the order. That way you have the invoice in QuickBooks and you can immediately accept and receive payment or run a credit card. That's also referred to as manual billing, when you have to open the transaction and hit Post to QuickBooks. Now, to make life easy, let's assume that this demo company we're looking at has a 28-day billing cycle. The billing cycle, just again to make it easier, is going to be from 2/1 to 2/28. That's a 28-day cycle, so we need to run billing on the 28th. Well, let's assume it is February 28th, and we need to run billing for everything that's rented. I would go to the rental info, billing, run billing. I would pick the ending date of the billing cycle, so I'm going to pick the 28th. I'm going to tell it that we do run a 28-day cycle. So the number of billing days is 28. If you do calendar month, every 30 or 31 days, depending on the month, your billing end date, may have, if for January, you may have put in 1/31 to bill everyone from the 1st of January to the 31st. But your days in the billing cycle would float every month. Some days would be 30, some days would be 31. So this is where you tell the software, even though on the actual transaction we put the billing increment to monthly, this is where we tell it that we do bill 28 days versus 30 or 31. That defines monthly right here. I can have the serial number and the location show up on the invoices that go to QuickBooks, and I can hit Generate Pre-Billing. Once I've generated my billing, I could hit View Pre-Billing. And this would be a batch. I've got a lot of extra data in here from prior. Let me get rid of all the old stuff. This would be an example kind of billing batch if you did invoice all your customers at one time. This would be something you're looking at. Here's what we just created. We've got our 2 units. It's billing them from the 4th to the 28th, the ending of our billing cycle, basically from our delivery date to the cutoff date. I told it to prorate, so our total monthly charge is usually 28, but for this invoice it's going to be 24 because it's prorated. Then going forward, they're on the same billing cycle as the rest of my customers. I've got my weekly service charge, which we told not to prorate, just be a flat rate. I've got my delivery, again, flat rate, not to prorate, and told it to run once, so it's on here. I could then hit Post to QuickBooks at the top of this screen. It would create invoices in QuickBooks for me for every transaction on this list. If for whatever reason the dates look wrong or you forgot to add a charge in and we need to go back before you send it to QuickBooks, if you hit Close, you're just going to be taken right back to your Run Billing screen. You could put in a date for the billing batch you want to delete, so the one you just ran, hit Delete a Billing Run, and it deletes that batch, so you could go back to your items rented, make a change, and then rerun the billing. Now, in the scenario where you have maybe multiple billing groups, or basically if someone rents something out on the 4th, they need to be billed on the 4th of every month. Someone rents something out on the 5th, they need to be billed on the 5th of every month. We would need to set up a billing group. So you may have 28, 30, or 31 different billing groups. So I could double-click in that billing group field, and I could set up billing groups. So I could have one for pretty much every day in a month. I'm not going to go through and set them all up, but you get the idea. We would just create one billing group for each day of the month. We could then, if this customer was renting it out on the 4th, we would put them in billing group number 4. So now every day, maybe at the end of every day, you would go in to rental info, billing, and run billing. And let's say it's March 4th. You come into the office. You were then going to bill everything that was rented out on the 4th of that month or from the 4th of the prior month. So you're only billing those customers in that group. And we would have maybe 30 days in our billing cycle. generate the pre-billing just like you did before, and view the pre-billing. So it generates the same billing, but you're now going from the 4th to the 4th for all those customers. And the next day you got into the office, you would run billing group number 5, and then number 6, and so on.
Why is it 2613 for the month?
It is still prorated because it's not a full 30 days from the 4th to the 4th due to February having a limited number of days. You can always tell the software when you run billing not to prorate it, and it would do a monthly charge no matter what. So I go back to items rented and I turn off prorate. Then if I run my billing group number 4, just like we did before, generate the pre-billing. Now it comes out to a full 28 without prorating. Now we have a couple different ways to put this back into inventory. The easiest way, if a customer calls to schedule a pickup, you probably would just write on the route, go down, select a delivery, maybe pickup, and put in the pickup date. Put it on the route for a pickup. And then you could put in the date returned. The date returned is what physically closes this transaction. Everything is considered still on rent and out of inventory until it's been returned. That's what also stops the billing. So if I put in a return date and hit return all, it's going to go through. If you notice on the far right here, every item has a date returned. Return all would put in that 2/21 for every item on this list that we see in front of us. You also, on the other hand, could put in a date returned if they just returned one toilet but still had another one out. So you could do the date return line by line as they return things versus returning all. It's going to prompt you, do you want to return all these items? I'm going to hit yes. It asks me now, do I want to invoice these items? And this just depends on how your company bills. If you do invoice their final on return, you could hit yes here, and it's going to stick in their final invoice in a batch ready to go to QuickBooks. Or maybe if you've billed in advance and you've already billed them, you don't want to issue them a credit, you could just hit no here, and it's just going to return everything back into inventory, and the transaction would be closed. So if I hit yes, it actually generates one final invoice. When I hit close, and if I go look at items rented, it's no longer on items rented if it's been returned. If I go to rental info, billing, and view pending transactions, here is where that batch screen would sit, and this would be their final invoice if you told it to invoice when you returned it. You could send that to QuickBooks. If you had told it to prorate and you had then said yes to invoice on return, it would have prorated the amount from the 4th to the 21st because it hadn't been out a full month. Again, you saw I had turned prorate off. Once an item has been returned, if you want to look it up in any kind of like a history, you can go to rental info, rental inventory transactions. So this is going to show you everything that's ever been rented that was either open or closed. So you get a running history of everything pretty much you've billed for. Here's one we just closed, sitting in the history. You can always, from this list, double-click the customer name to open up that transaction again if you wanted to reference any of the notes on there or see the full information. What's really cool is if we double-click the serial number, we go into the item details, you can see the transaction it was tied to. If we had posted any of that information to QuickBooks, you would have seen the actual billing history show up here. Anything that's posted to QuickBooks would then show up under the total income generated for this particular unit in the top right. Now, another nice feature about rental transactions is we can create like a kit of items or a group of items. So if I go to Rental Info, Rental Item Groups, I'm going to create a group called maybe Standard PT. That group is comprised of a portable toilet rental, also a delivery charge, and a service item, say weekly service. You could have many different groups. So if you've got hand washing stations or you've got different equipment that you rent out with power cords and batteries and chargers, you could create a group of those items. That way you didn't have to select them one by one on each rental you do. I just create a group containing those items, and now if I go in to enter a new rental, pick my customer, I can just go down here right above the line items. I can add a group item, pick the group name and a quantity, and hit the green plus sign to add. And automatically adds those items onto the transaction. So it just saves you time in data entry. Now I could put in my serial numbers, adjust the prices if I needed to, or the dates. Now, one alternative to using a route to manage delivery and pickups. You don't have to use the route schedule for delivery and pickups. You could use tasks. And that's that option right up here near the top. We have a delivery task, a pickup task, an exchange task, or a follow-up task. I could hit delivery task, for instance, and hit create task. And it takes me right into a task, or basically a work order, instead of adding it to the route. So here again, I could assign it to a driver or a technician to do. I could put in a date that this task is due, like a delivery date. It automatically puts in the task type of rental delivery and puts in the notes from that transaction, the portable toilet. And when I hit close here, I now have a task on my task list to manage the delivery. Some people prefer to manage pickups and deliveries as tasks because once you have a running list that you can make sure it was completed. If it's on a route schedule, it may get mixed up with the route, and you don't really have a good way to track whether that delivery or pickup was done. This may be a little easier for you. So you can maybe create a delivery task or pickup task, and then you use the route schedule to put it on the route for, let's say, a weekly service. Now, without getting too specific, there are a few more things I want to show you for rentals. If we look up at the top, depending on the type of equipment you're renting, you may not want to serialize each line item, meaning if I'm renting out 25 portable toilets, I don't want to see 25 line items on here, each one with its own serial number. That gets a little bit crazy. So for instance, I could put in a quantity of maybe 10 on the line item, and then at the top left I could hit assign serial numbers. Here I could then put in my portable toilet, and I could put in the different serial numbers that are tied to this rental. So I could put in all serial numbers on this screen that are on this transaction.
That's how Ron just do it one day.
What?
One billing? Yeah, but you can't do what's right. Like, you can't do it.
So here I can put in the 10 serial numbers that are maybe tied to that
Everybody would have to
item without having to have 10 line items on it. To mark individual items as returned using this method, I would then go to Assign Serial Numbers, bring up that screen again. I can hit Return Mode at the top. I can put in a return date for a specific serial number tied to this transaction. From one click, I can hit See Rental Item List from the rental transaction. It takes me to my rental inventory where I could see what serial number belongs or is currently rented to what customer. If I want to scan with barcodes, I can hit Use Barcode. I would tell the software to go into the enter mode, basically, and then I would just start scanning a barcode number. It would then find the matching piece of inventory and automatically add the line item onto the rental transaction. Same with returning. When I do return a rental, I could then start scanning, put in a date returned. I have an option to invoice on return. I would just start scanning the different barcodes of the items I'm returning. We have a lot of different forms you can print from this drop-down. You can see the pre-built ones here for us. We have delivery, pickup ticket. You can do a quote or an invoice. One of the popular options is to use a Word template. When you hit print, you could then have, let's say, your own document or your own agreement for the sales guys that need to print out. You could develop this document to have your own logo on it. You could do this for delivery, pickup tickets. And now we do have about 20 minutes left. I'd love to open it up to any questions. Maybe I can show off some specific examples or scenarios or help talk you through anything.
Can you show us how to enter, like, can you show us how to add a special event, like a one portable toilet rental, like for a weekend rental?
Yeah. You would follow the same process like we've been talking about on this rental transaction. You would probably have all special events, since they're kind of billed out at a flat rate. You're charging, you know, $150 for the weekend or whatever that number is. Set it to flat rate, not to pro rate. We would do quantity 1. We could then tell it, you know, your price would be whatever that weekend rental rate is. And we would use probably a rental start date and end date to track, you know, it's starting on Friday and then ending or being picked up on Monday.
Where's the option for tax, if it's a tax exempt?
That is all controlled by QuickBooks. So depending on what the customer is in QuickBooks, that's what the service program uses. You also have in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see the current assigned tax code to this customer from QuickBooks. You can override it. Right now in QuickBooks, this customer is set to be that tax rate, 6.5%. I can tell it to override it, but just be careful when you do this because it will go into QuickBooks that way.
So if this were a new customer, I would just choose, if it was tax exempt, I would just choose it down there?
Correct. All new customers should be entered into QuickBooks first because you do have to put in those specific settings such as sales tax rates. I recommend that's where you start for new accounts.
Okay. Can you also, with the templates that you showed us, can you email those with an invoice to a customer PDF?
No, they're not automated. I mean, from Word you can do that. So if I hit print and I had my template designed, I could hit print in Word, and depending on how you did your template from Word, you could then go to File and I think Save and Send and Add as an attachment, and you could go through all that step, but then have to find the customer's email address and put it in. Nothing's really automated. What a lot of our customers do is if you need to invoice the customer immediately, like a special event type thing, go ahead and hit Post to QuickBooks after you enter it, and then in QuickBooks you can email the customer an invoice and use your existing invoice template from QuickBooks.
We also have to sign a lease agreement as we send them their invoice, but there's not an easier way to do that without going through all the other stuff?
No. No, there's nothing automated. I mean, you could do the lease agreement as that Word template. That is what we see kind of the most popular. You could print that to a PDF and then save the QuickBooks invoice to a PDF and then send one email to the customer.
Okay.
Michael, could you go back through the delivery date and the build-through date? Give an example of when that build-through date would change. Like, for example, if we had a toilet that was rented out to a construction site, say, starting December 1st, and then now they want it picked up and it's not a full 28 days in this billing cycle.
Yeah, the build-through date, you never change when you're entering in a new rental. That automatically changes from month to month as you do billing. So if I rent something out today on the 4th, and let's say they return it on the 21st, the build-through date when you run billing for that unit or charge for that unit would now become the 21st because you're now invoicing them from the 4th to the 21st.
Okay.
So every time you run a batched billing, this build-through date adjusts. So if I run billing like on a 28-day cycle and I run billing on the 28th, all my rentals, all the build-through dates will be 2/28, and that then becomes the starting date for the next cycle. Everything would be billed from one day after to the next ending date. Moving forward, the only time you really need to play with this date is if you're just starting with the service program and you're entering in stuff that you already have out on rent.
Okay.
So your existing transactions, that date needs to reflect what that customer is currently invoiced through. So basically the last ending date of their billing cycle. If that makes sense.
Okay, yes it does.
Okay, good. You guys are so complicated. I don't know why. You give me a headache every time I talk to a rental company. One thing I forgot to mention here, if anyone ever until someone thinks of another question, you can switch this to a reservation, and you could put in reservation beginning and ending dates instead of making this a rental. So if you're putting in maybe special events ahead of time, you could make that a reservation, and you would see it on a separate list under rental info reservations. Until you turn it into a rental, then you would see it under items rented.
Why wouldn't you just have that be on your task list as a future rental?
I much prefer it as just, the way I would use it is just enter it as a rental. It'll pull anything you need to from inventory and create a task to remind yourself to do the pickup, a month, or a delivery a month from now. That's the way I would do it, and not even worry about reservation, because then you're going to forget 2 months later to switch it to a rental and bill for it. So I just wanted to show you the option for this.
Then you're not showing up. And okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so for us where we do have, current business and we've just been literally working it out of our QuickBooks, and we're trying to determine how we're going to come up with our system for serializing our units. And so then we've got to include them all, and you showed that system of being able to enter multiple serial numbers at a time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, technically what we ought to do is just go in and do our rental inventory and just do 1 through 1,000 or whatever it is. And
if
then
you've got a 1,000 blue tough ways, I mean, you could have the serial number BT1 through BT1000. And then you can always do like A relabels or something and start labeling the toilets with those numbers as your guys deliver them. And then you'll start building up that. At least the software will know you have 1,000 units and you can track how many you have. It may take you some time just to get the right numbers on the right units.
Well, and that's the other thing is that, trying to come up with a good system for, getting the ones that are already out numbered and into our system. So, how would the best way to be to integrate what we already have in our QuickBooks, what's already been rented out, into this?
You do have to enter in the transactions. I mean, take that memorized transaction from QuickBooks, take the information from it, enter that as a rental transaction inside the service program, and then delete the memorized transaction from QuickBooks. And that there, you just got to migrate all the data and set up the transactions, and then you have to pick a date that is going to be the date you're going to run billing out of the service program, and you'll stop billing out of QuickBooks at that point.
Okay, and that date would typically be started from the last date that they were billed in QuickBooks? Correct. Okay.
That's what I would put that build through date as if you're setting up that rental transaction. For a customer that already has something rented, that build through date is their last invoice date.
Okay. And then it's automatically going to roll over every month until that toilet is picked up?
Yep, every month. I think if someone rented something out today, you would, I think we discussed you would put them in like a billing group for that day, and you run billing, and until it's returned, it's going to generate an invoice every month.
Okay. Can you go back and show where you do set up your delivery ticket? Because that would basically essentially be our work order.
Yeah, the delivery ticket that you can print from this drop-down right here, delivery ticket, the fields that are controlled, or that control that work order, are the delivery notes.
Okay.
Down at the bottom, the driver, and the date for delivery. All that information, if you go to print the delivery ticket, will show up on it. Notes at the bottom, delivery and pickup dates if they're populated.
And I have notes from the previous class that it said that you talked about a delivery task and creating tasks.
It's up to you. I mean, if you wanted just a simple form you could print, that's all this does, is give you a printout.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't do anything else. If you want to physically track, have like something that reminds you to do that delivery, that's where you would use a task.
Okay.
Create a task. And then we could assign it to a guy, set the due date for the delivery date, and we can hit print on the task to use as a work order.
Can you include a map on the ticket or on either way?
The only way to include the map would be, like on this task, I could hit map, and it's going to open up MapQuest. And then from MapQuest, you can print this out along with the task and just staple it together.
Does it automatically put the information for the delivery address in MapQuest, or do I have to enter that?
No, it automatically mapped right from my office location to the customer. If you see the address 9515 South A1A, automatically puts all that in and gets the directions.
Okay.
The guy has a mobile device. I think you can, or any smartphone, you can just go send mobile, put his phone number, and he gets a text message with a link he can pull right up for this one. So that may be one way to eliminate a piece of paper, give the guy directions right to his phone, and then print him out the work order.
Okay, can you also show us how to route it, how you picked which route it needed to go to? You just picked, I think, the R1. So can you show us how we would find what route would be best for that to fit on?
Yeah, if you did not want to use kind of right from the rental transaction, you could go to Route Info, map new distance for a route stop. And I could
we
pick
do this when we're taking the call from the customer. At that time, we can look at this.
I would do it after.
Because we get a lot of customers that will want, like, the day that we're delivering right up front.
I mean, you can do this with the customer. It just may take some time depending on your routes. So you got to pick the customer. You had to hit get distance. If you got 1,000 stops on here, it's going to take a minute or two to chug through before it would recommend what stop it should be on.
Okay.
But it would then give you a list of every stop you currently have on the schedule, and it would give you, it's going to list it in distance, shortest to farthest away, and then just put this customer right on the route. You could just hit after. And it automatically puts it on the route schedule after the closest stop. I will make this training video available hopefully by the end of today. If not, it'll be up sometime tomorrow on our training video website. If any of you have seen it recently, we have migrated all of our training videos, and they're now hosted on YouTube, so there's no downloading. You don't have to wait for them to play or buffer any of that mess. You can just go right to videos and right from YouTube.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. If you go to the playlist tab, it groups the videos by kind of class: Q&As, rentals, mobile, beginner.
Is that where, would I be able to figure out how to change or erase something that we have set up back when we started with this, looking at this program in July? We had some item lines that we had put in that are incorrect. Instead of, routes under routing, we put like the drivers, and I need to get those out of there and change them. So
if I would watch the routing and mapping class, that'll show you how to set them up. But quickly, if you want to get rid of a stop on the schedule, you can just right-click, delete record. That'll get rid of a whole stop. If you want to change like R1 to something else, you can just double-click anywhere in this column, and I could change this now to whatever I needed, C1.
Okay, so double-click.
Double-click the route name.
Okay.
Blue and underlined. So anything blue and underlined,
right.
if that's something you're trying to change, double-click will probably be your best bet to be able to edit it or change it around.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
No problem. I hope everyone has a great afternoon. See you in the next class.
You as well.